Hi everyone, it's Natasha. In this video, I'm going to be inking and coloring a fashion sketch. I'm also going to talk about some fashion sketches in general, the difference between fashion illustration, fashion sketches, fashion flats, fashion croquis, and when you would use all of them. I'll cover the materials you should have and what to focus on as you're learning. You get to kind of see how one comes to fruition. Let's get started.
So, what is a fashion sketch? A fashion sketch is a quick way to express an idea that will be made into clothing. It's typically going to be a full figure drawing, maybe a half figure for just a set of pants or a skirt or just a top. An accessory might be a standalone. These typically, you might see a designer using croquis. What's a croquis? Broadly speaking, this is a quick sketch of a live model, but in fashion, however, a croquis is often used to refer to a blank figure model to put clothing sketches on. Now, I actually highly recommend practicing traditional croquis sketching to improve your lines. Go to the park, make a few quick sketches of people before they move. You want to be able to get the general lines of a pose down roughly in. You could watch a fashion show and draw each model as they walk with no pausing. Get the broad strokes of their limbs and how the fabric falls. The first couple ones you do will be really bad, but you might catch a glimpse of a really inspired line. Keep going. Don't let yourself spend more than a minute or two on each one. They're not supposed to be perfect or detailed. I'll post a video showing this in more detail in the future. Back to fashion croquis. These you can print or photocopy from a base that you find online, and then simply trace over them or draw right on top of the lines if you print them out light enough. You can also draw your own ones and then print or photocopy those. I'll add a video on how to sketch these out in the future. Now, fashion sketches, fashion illustration, and fashion flats are all related. Any of them might use a croquis. Fashion illustration, this is going to be artwork for clothing that may already exist or may just be conceptual. It might be used as a fashion sketch. These might be used for commercial purposes, perhaps from a fashion company or any other company who wants a stylish image. You can use fashion illustration in your portfolio. However, if this is what you want to spend most of your time doing, consider becoming an illustrator instead of a designer. They get to do more of the glamorous images. So, what are fashion flats? Fashion flats are technical and proportional images. They're going to show all seams, all fasteners. They're going to be computer illustrated currently. These are what are used in tech packs. A factory is going to use this to design and actually build the garment. The factories don't want atmosphere, they want accuracy. This is what jobs want from a designer, not the fancy illustrations. They want a very clear image that can be used in order to craft a pattern, to put things together, and to actually make sure that at the end of the day, the real garment turns out the same as the design. Now, these drawings may be done on a figure, but usually they're going to be drawn either curved around an invisible body or simply on a table. Before computers, these were drawn by hand, and small companies may still do this, but you're very unlikely to be hired unless you can do a fashion flat in Adobe Illustrator. So, on that note, what's the point of learning fashion sketches? These are going to be used to express your ideas, to understand and curate a collection at the design stage before spending time doing the detail work on a flat. You'll be able to communicate what you want if you're working directly with a pattern maker or a small factory. They can also be used to advertise your work if you've got your collection for sale, or to advertise your creativity for freelance work. Showing sketches can be useful in a portfolio to show your creative process in designing a collection, so that companies can understand how you develop an idea from inspiration to completed garment. So, what should you include? Any pertinent construction details, the proportions, major seams, clothing details. What's of interest in this style? Why should anyone care? Where does the fabric bunch? Where does it stretch? On that note, is it a woven or a knit fabric? Is it a stretch or a stiff fabric? How does it close? How does someone actually get this fabric and this garment on their body? Are there zippers? Are there buttons? Are there buttonholes? Are there ties, stretching, elastic? All that sort of thing. How does this garment actually work on a functional level? Are there pockets? Are there other bonus details? Now, how to design the figure and pose. The longer you've been sketching figures, the faster and more consistent you'll be. A good idea is to study fashion sketches on Pinterest and Instagram. The figures are elongated in fashion drawing. Look at where the proportions are stretched and why. 8 or 9 heads is very common, but other proportions may be favored by different artists and for different purposes. Where do they put the legs, the feet, the arms? What did they leave? Fashion illustration is often stylized and may not even have a face at all. How are they showing off different design details? How do they draw the back, the side profile? Sometimes a garment, the interesting part is at the back of it. How do other artists do this? Find ways that you like and try to work them into your own style. Study the greats, the classic fashion designers. Dior's sketches are some of my favorites, and Louis Vuitton does amazing shoe sketches. Make sure you get a good background in anatomy. Even though fashion sketches often look distorted, they still follow the rules of anatomy. It's just a little bit stretched and stylized. I'll put a link to a great source in the description. It's so important to actually understand what's going on underneath the surface so that you can understand how bodies actually move, why they twist and bend and turn the way they do, and why a pose looks awkward because you're not actually understanding something about the body underneath. You want to make sure your poses are balanced. If your girl looks like she's about to fall over, it's going to distract from what's actually going on. Work from runway photos to get great walking poses, and pay attention to how the fabric actually moves as they walk, how it drapes and flows around the body. You can get some great dynamic looks from paying attention to how it actually exists in the real world. You can practice copying artists you like. Now, don't try to pass this off as your own work. What you want to do is practice until you get the hang of it, and then you change it so that it's original and your own. You may take a pose but put your own outfit on it, or take a skirt that you like, the way they did the ruffles, and then just, change the top, change the color, make it your own kind of style. Good artists copy, great artists steal. What does this mean? It means you grab inspiration from lots of different sources and you put them together into your own thing. There's nothing new on this earth, just ways to combine different ideas. Also, make sure you're studying physical garments. Check out your own clothes. How are they constructed? Where are the seams? What do those seams look like? Are there zippers? How are they attached? If you sew, you'll be ahead of the game here because you'll understand what's actually possible in reality. There's nothing worse than having someone bring a design to you as a pattern maker and going, this actually wouldn't work in reality. She's not going to be able to get in and out of it. Or sometimes certain seams just have to be in the right places in order for a garment to hold up, or in order for it to actually stretch and fit around the body in the right way. If you're trying to do a fitted bodice and you're missing the right darts, it's not going to work. So take a look at some pre-made patterns and kind of understand how these garments are actually put together. And start sewing so that you can actually see it for yourself. Look at real clothing in stores. Check out the types of brands that you want to be designing. Even if you can, go in and investigate them. Make sure you check out the seams. How are they constructed? See how they work. Especially see if you can look at the same piece that you saw on the runway in person. What's the difference? What are the details that actually made it move that way on the runway? Check out fashion illustrators who draw from runway shows. Some people do this live very quickly and very proficiently. Learn how they translate the garments in real life into a sketch on the page, but keep it with that motion. What do they keep? What do they change? What do they just ignore? How do they represent different fabrics, different prints? How do they do their construction details, like their pleats or ruffles or transparencies? Now, if you're talking about fashion illustration, something that's for more of an art purpose, you can get crazier, more dramatic. You might add more shading or only do half of a figure, maybe just from the shoulders up, things like that. Let's talk about supplies. I'll add a video in the future about specific supplies I use, but I'll cover them briefly here. In this drawing, you can see I used a pencil sketch originally with an eraser. Then I went over and inked it with black pen, black ink, with a pen holder and black ink. And then I went through and colored it with some watercolors. I also often use different flat paper. This book paper is in a sketchbook. You can also download pre-printed croquis or sketch them yourself, like I said before, and then work off of those. For inking, I also often use a marker or fine line pens. You can also just use a regular black pen. You don't need to get expensive or fancy here, especially for fashion sketches. They're just designed to get an idea across as expressively as possible. So I really like the way a thick Sharpie marker works because it gives you a really bold line. Same with the inking pen that I'm using here. It's very clear and expressive. You can go thick. But if you're more comfortable with a fine liner and switching your pen every time you want a different size, a lot of designers love working like that. For coloring, I'm using watercolors here. I also love using colored inks. A lot of designers absolutely love markers, and some even use colored pencils. Sometimes for something like a fashion sketch that's going to go into production next, you wouldn't even bother to color it. You just add some fabric swatches that you're actually going to use so you can see the real color that this garment is going to be. Colored pencils often take too long and are a little too light, so I would recommend only using those if you just need a really quick pop of color on something, just to kind of bring it out. Otherwise, you can get some markers that fit just the colors you need. You don't need to invest in a hugely expensive set right off the get-go. You can even use really cheap markers. The benefit of the expensive ones is that you can get so many different colors, you can pick exactly what it is, what you're envisioning. But if you're good with working with paints, you can mix those colors yourself from a cheap set as well. You definitely don't want to delve into anything too wild if you're doing fashion sketching versus illustration. It's just going to take too long to use or too long to dry. If you are going for illustration, if you're designing something that's meant to be used as art, then go wild. Use oil paints, pastels, whatever you want. You can make it beautiful and dramatic. Now, a lot of artists love sketching digitally too. Some of my favorite apps are Procreate and Adobe Photoshop. If you're going to be doing flat sketches, you want Adobe Illustrator. This is the best one for computer-aided design. There's lots of free resources on YouTube to teach you how to use it. I definitely recommend biting the bullet and getting used to it as soon as you can. But just for fashion sketches, Procreate's great, and you only have to pay once. There's other apps out there as well. You might want to experiment and kind of see what you like. Some artists like to sketch ahead of time, take a photograph, and then color online in digital format, or you can start your sketch straight away into digital format. The great thing about fashion sketches is that when you're working, if you don't like it, you screw it up, just start a new one. The whole point is not to invest too heavily in any one sketch. Especially when you're just practicing. Practice quick sketches in pen or marker so that you can't erase. Make sure you're training those quick, interesting lines to help add motion. And again, if you make a mistake, start fresh. Don't spend too long on any one image. You're trying to just get your hand practiced and making the lines that you want. You want to understand how to do a quick frame for a body or how to visualize one in your head once you've got the hang of it. You'll see in my next video that for most of my fashion sketches, I don't bother drawing a body underneath. I just go straight to drawing. And it works well for me. A lot of people just add the figure underneath every time so that they know they're getting it right and they can't screw it up. You'll also notice in my next video that, yeah, I spend a bit of time, oh, those legs aren't working and I have to redo them because it just doesn't work. So there are benefits to both ways. Once you get the hang of it, you can work faster without an underframe, but you're going to get it right every time with one. The detriment to using a croquis is that it can make all of your drawings look the same. This can also be a benefit. All of your drawings are going to look consistent. So, pluses and minuses for both. Also remember to leave some white space. Not every line needs to be drawn and not every line needs to be touching to connect with each other. Leaving white space can really add a bit of highlight to your drawing. Don't forget to add accessories in. Add some shoes, purses, jewelry. Make sure they have a nice hairstyle. Maybe a hat. At the end of the day, you don't need to add any of that. It's just kind of to make it a little more fancy, to give it a bit more personality and some fun. Now for coloring, make sure you pick a material you're comfortable with. If pencil crayons are your favorite, work with those. Don't listen to me. But it's a good idea to get used to something like markers, maybe paint, just to kind of be able to put a very quick, very bright, very saturated color down on the page. You don't want anyone to be looking at it and going, oh, is that really a light blue or is it really more of a teal? You want them to see it right away and know. You can practice adding some shading. For fashionable sketches, it's not so important. For illustrations, there's different artists who do all sorts of different types of shading and different types of styles and backgrounds. For a regular fashion sketch, you don't need a background. It's completely unnecessary. Make sure you buy some good skin tone colors if you're doing markers, or practice making them if you're doing paints. Make sure you remember to use different skin tones. Not everyone has the same one. I would also recommend just practicing every day. When I was a teenager, I spent 1 year drawing at least once every day. It didn't have to be fancy, it didn't have to be detailed, it could just be a quick sketch, and it could be anything. People, women, men, children, animals, objects, etc. But once I got used to making time every day, more often than not, I would end up with a sketch I liked, or a full drawing or painting. And now I love that book of 365 drawings as an example of growth. I learned a lot. You always want to be looking at artists who are better than you. You'll only learn if you keep trying to do new things. If you can't draw hands or whatever else, study and trace from artists who can. Don't just keep ignoring it. And don't neglect everything else in the world. One great tip is to go through a magazine and pick a random page and sketch whatever is there. If it's a car, a tree, a house, a guy, congrats, that's what you're drawing. You can do this really detailed, but a better way is to do quick minute sketches and to do a whole bunch in a row. Do the whole magazine. If you pick a fashion magazine, you'll learn how to draw accessories and garments you never thought of before. If you pick a more diverse magazine, you'll increase your general skills, and this will come in so handy when you don't even expect it. And we're about done.
There was some useful information for you in there. I will be posting new videos every week, so make sure to check back. Please give it a like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see me cover next. I'll see you guys next week. Bye now.